Hi, I'm Donna Ray.
And I'm Al Wadley.
Welcome to our podcast, Feldenkrais for Life.
In each episode, we will discuss ideas and experiences pertaining to the Feldenkrais method.
You're going to learn skills that will move pain to comfort, anxiety to ease, and we'll explore learning and how to spark creativity.
To learn more about Donna, visit her site at donnaray.com.
To find Al Wadley, go to achievingexcellence.com.
Hey, Donna.
Hi, Al. Good to see you. We're viewing each other on Zoom as we speak this morning.
Yeah, it's good to see you again. It's been a while.
It's been a while. I've been teaching a lot of training programs. Been a very busy year for me.
That's good. That's good. I've been teaching workshops this summer. It's been a lot of fun.
Fantastic. Sharing our joy and passion about the Feldenkrais method with many, many people. And that's what we get to do on this podcast too. It's wonderful.
That's right. That's right. So today we're going to talk about willpower.
And tenacity. Mm-hmm. Well, as maybe our viewers know, maybe not, Dr. Feldenkrais said too much willpower can be extremely detrimental.
He did say that.
Yeah.
To work against us. And he declared the relationship between using excessive willpower and ability. And that if we use excessive willpower, generally our ability is low. We also need to use our willpower if we're going to learn something to improve ourselves. And that ratio should change. That relationship should change so that as we use willpower, our ability increases and our need of willpower decreases. So as we become more able to do things in our lives, we need less and less willpower, which means we use less and less effort to do the things we want to do.
Well said. So to make that concrete, when we've made our New Year's resolutions and we've decided to go to the gym and get fit, it takes some willpower to get to the gym. But if we use excess willpower and overdo it, we rapidly injure our joints or pull muscles, make ourselves sore and uncomfortable, and we don't go back. So there's something to be said about getting to the gym that has to do with willpower. But now, once we're there, we really need to use awareness and discriminate, how we're doing what we're doing and what we're doing exactly, taking into account our age and stage of life, and not get into the no pain, no gain. I'm going to overcome this and just drive myself till I hurt myself. So we want to find a balance, don't we, with self-awareness, making high-level distinctions, and self-care so that our ability increases, like you just said.
There's a lot of benefits to lifting weights and doing hard work and moving heavy objects. Those are all really useful things to do. They can really be beneficial to building muscle and strength and bone mass and all that kind of thing. And what you're saying and what you're so right about is to not push so hard, to not work so hard in doing it, but to not to go to the border of ability to where you're hurting yourself. And before we started this, you gave an example of some older adults that you work with who have gone to the gym and they get hooked up with some young trainer who really doesn't understand working with older adults, it sounds like. He pushes them too hard and has them do too many reps, too much weight, and they have a hard time recovering. That's too much. They're overriding their sense of well-being and their ability. They're not making distinctions. They're not discriminating in themselves, the sensations that feel good. So older adults can do that, but they got to work with somebody who can guide them in a way that is going to be ecological for them. It's going to help them to build strength, be stronger, build bone mass, but not, tear them up.
Yeah, exactly. So fitness, and as you said, weightlifting, exercise of various kinds, they are related to building muscle mass and increasing bone mass. And there's a lot of evidence now that people that have long lives and live many, many years, work with keeping their muscles strong and they remain fit. So finding ways to do that is so important. So one way that I suggest to my students is to do awareness through movement, to use the Feldenkrais method so they gain self-awareness of how they're doing what they're doing, and then move slowly to begin with. And there's evidence actually that you can play around with weightlifting and move very, very, very slow and build muscle mass. So if you're going slow, you're paying attention, know that you can increase your health. You don't have to go full bore immediately with exercise systems to gain results.
Yeah, there's a lack of awareness and distributed awareness in a lot of weightlifting. People are often focused on the muscle at hand, if they're doing curls, focusing on the bicep, make it build, strengthen my bicep. They're not paying attention to how the weight is distributed on their feet or what's going on in their back or the pelvis, how they're using themselves as a whole person to lift or not lift that weight very well. Mm-hmm. And if they learn to make distinctions, discriminations, and how they're using themselves, that can be really beneficial. And I'd say, use less weight. Then don't go to your maximum, use less weight so you can pay attention to yourself and learn to lift that as a whole person in a more ecological way. Make those discriminations that most people don't make when they're lifting weights because they're so absorbed in the effort.
Yeah. One way to practice that is you can take weights, or if you're standing or even if you're sitting, imagine that you have a suitcase in each hand. And you can do that now, Al. And our listeners can do it too, you can't do it if you're driving a car, but you can do it if you're sitting at your desk or standing. And if you're driving, then do it when you get out of the car. But imagine that you're going to pick up 2 suitcases, one in each hand, equal weight. Bend down a little bit, take hold of the handles, and now begin to lift them. And so you've got symmetrical weight in both hands from your feet, or if you're sitting, from your feet still, and your pelvis, lift those suitcases and notice what you do with yourself. And I can see that you're lengthening your spine out, that you're starting to balance. You balance the weight of the suitcases with your whole self. You can sense your feet on the floor, the length of your spine, the way your pelvis supports your spine and your head. And your shoulders become wide because they need to be wide so the weight's distributed through your torso all the way to the ground. So if you're a beginning weightlifter, choose light weights and imagine that they're really heavy. And notice how you mobilize yourself. And it becomes a really fun game, actually. What's it like for you to do this imaginary weightlifting with your suitcases, Al?
Oh, I enjoyed it very much. And what I found, a lot of the mobilization was in my pelvis. So, bending down to pick up the suitcases, my pelvis went backwards, my knees bent. And then to lift them, I brought my pelvis forward. And so then everything lined up after that. My knees went back, and then I was standing very lengthened, very tall, very comfortable. It was really nice. I liked the experience quite a bit.
This is a way to play around with self-organization that's enjoyable and kind of fun-loving. I suggest that when people are going to move, because that's a time when people injure themselves when they're moving from one home to the next or moving stuff from one room to the next for rearranging their furniture, is that they lift things that they don't ordinarily lift. And they often do it quickly and without forethought. So if you're going to lift a chair or you're going to lift a plant, people lift plants haphazardly, they're very heavy. Go through this exercise with yourself. Imagine lifting, mobilize yourself, get yourself organized, and then do the lift. And you'll automatically stabilize your core, as people say. It's necessary. That's the time when you want to stabilize the big muscles of your torso to protect your spine. And you will do that if you imagine whatever it is that you're going to lift as being very, very heavy.
And speaking of moving, I can share a story about how I used my willpower to get myself into a difficult situation. So some time ago, I moved to New Mexico with my family, And I was convinced, moving from Colorado to New Mexico, totally convinced that it would be a really good thing for my family, that things would improve for us and life would get better and so on and so forth. And I used a lot of willpower to push this through, to get the house ready to sell and organize the move, taking trips down there to find a place to live and all that. And so I made it happen. But I put so much effort into this intention, into this goal, that I wasn't paying attention to other minimal cues from my family that maybe this wasn't the really right thing to do. So we did it anyway. And I paid the consequences. It was not a good thing. It didn't work out. It was a very difficult time down there, and eventually moved back to Colorado. I want to share that example as that I was overriding discriminations. I was overriding distinctions that, had I paid attention to, could have saved us a whole lot of unpleasantness, in that whole trip down there and living down there for a while.
That's an example of a fixed mindset, isn't it?
Oh, totally. I was very fixed.
You were fixed on the goal, and you weren't paying attention to the nuances and making important discriminations along the path.
I had my blinders on.
Well, and I think that happens to people so much of the time,
Oh, yeah.
All kinds of things. I know people who've done that sort of thing with home improvements. They have something in mind that's going to make it so much better for their family. And then they go through hell getting it done and living in a state of chaos, or, the expenses rise, and they haven't done the proper research to know what it's going to cost. And things are always more expensive than we think they're going to be. But we have a dream, that it's going to be better. It's going to be better. So sometimes I say to people, well, what is it that you want to make better right now? What could you do? What are some smaller things that you could do? Instead of changing the entire floor plan of your house, can you do some small remodeling? Can you do some painting? Can you buy a couple of pieces of new furniture? It's like look at the ergonomics of the whole situation rather than revamping the whole home, or clean up some clutter. So there are lots of steps in between having to do with changes to be made.
Yeah. I recently put a new window in our living room. So I cut a hole in the wall and stuck a new window in there.
Yeah.
And that didn't take too much willpower. I thought it through a number of times and planned it out. It went really well. And it adds so much more light to the room. And it's just beautiful. I'm so grateful that I did that. I took that step. And like you said, it's one small chunk. It was easy to do. And it makes such a huge difference. And yeah, I agree. We don't want to redo the whole thing all at once. It's too much. Do it in small pieces. Chunk it down into achievable pieces that you can be successful with. It's going to have a lot more appreciation for the project in the end.
Yeah, and that's an example of awareness through movement. We work with small movements, chunks of movements. We differentiate a movement, and then we link it to another movement. We're thinking so often of the skeleton, of course, because it's easy to sense and feel the weight of your skeleton. So if you move one part in a distinct way, and then you link it to another part, it becomes easier. So, like if you reach forward, for example, and you reach forward with your right arm, and you just move the arm forward, your fingertips pointing toward the wall, and you want to reach to get something off a shelf. So you can even do a bigger movement. Just reach like you're going to grab something off a bookshelf, and notice how you do the movement. Now let's go back to just reaching a little bit and sensing your shoulder blade. Sense your chest, because when your hand reaches forward, your shoulder blade is moving, your clavicle is moving. You probably are turning your head, your eyes are on the goal, on the object that you're reaching for. Maybe it's a special book that you want to read. And now bring the attention down a little bit lower and let your pelvis move. So if you're sitting, You may notice that you roll forward on your pelvis and lengthen your spine and arch your back a little bit. If you're standing, maybe you turn a little bit. If you're sitting, you'll actually turn a little bit too. But anyway, now rest your arm because we don't want to go beyond comfort. Because if you keep going with something, fatigue sets in. So take a little break, and you may feel a difference between your right arm and your left arm after simple movements like that. And now just reach spontaneously for that book forward and notice the quality of the movement. Has it changed a little bit? So what are you finding, Al?
The reach is lighter. You'd reach out and grab it. It's an imaginary book in front of me. So it's, it was nice. You took us through different variations and, trying it with a big movement, trying with a small movement, try combined with awareness, the shoulder blade, sensing the pelvis and the different parts involved in it. So spreading awareness throughout yourself while you're doing that movement really introduces variation and possibility that wasn't there before. Usually, our habits kind of organize us down a pretty often and organize us down a fairly rigid path. We're going to reach in the same way because we have our habits. And so variation helps to branch that out, add potential and possibility and doing it in different ways. And by doing that, it gets lighter, it's easier, and you get more books.
That's right. And the principle of making distinctions, going a little bit slower, taking time, it really matters. It can be applied to everything we do in small doses or in large doses. So we can do many practices of this sort throughout the day, and it becomes kind of a fun endeavor. And it keeps us healthy and well and feeling happy, making distinctions, or sometimes people say practicing granularity, being able to look at something from many different points of view. It increases our engagement of every situation we're in. The nuance of every situation becomes more vivid and accessible. It's the opposite of boredom.
Yeah. So here's another example of when I used willpower in my life, and it turned out really great.
Oh, I'd like to hear that.
Yeah. No. So so a long time ago, a couple of decades ago, I decided to become a Feldenkrais practitioner. And I said, this is what I'm going to do. It's going to be my business. This is the kind of how I'm going to make money. It's going to be my profession. And there were a lot of aspects of it that scared the crap out of me in the beginning, public speaking, teaching classes, that kind of thing. Very challenging for me. But I'd made that decision. And I used my willpower to set up a practice and to learn to manage my practice, manage the business, all this stuff. And I used my willpower to get myself into a teaching situations, which were very stressful and scary at first. And I kept with it. And there's this beautiful relationship between, the willpower and developing of ability. And that started to shift. And so my abilities improved as a practitioner and teaching, my public speaking, all that got easier and easier. And now the willpower goes down and down and down as the ability increases. And it takes very little effort for me to do what I do now. It's easy for me to teach classes and give lessons. I love it. It's deeply satisfying and fulfilling to me. It's the most beautiful thing in my life, really. I just love it. And so that's the use of willpower to create a learning situation and having that tenacity and stick-to-itness and being in it for the long run. It's a long game. Developing ability in a practice like this is the long game.
Well, I love your sharing. I love your experience. And I can relate to that too. The public speaking part of it especially. So I was terrified to get up in front of people. And I remember as a kid, I didn't want to do the book reports in front of the group. It was just so scary for me. But I too wanted to be a Feldenkrais practitioner, and it didn't even come to my mind that I would become a Feldenkrais trainer in the beginning because it all seemed so daunting and difficult, and I didn't want to be in front of people. But I found that the only thing that helped was doing it and doing it and doing it. And there was a shift, I have to say, away from my fear of probably failure and humiliation to the love of the method and the concern of the audience. And when that shift was made, the fear went away because it was no longer about me. But people could even say that to me before, but I had to learn how to control my nervous system, stay calm and focused, breathe, speak clearly, and share the method. And as you said, the ability of doing that increased, and also my understanding of the method increased. So lots of abilities were being refined in the act of doing it.
Yeah.
So, yeah. I encourage any practitioner that has any qualms about these matters to stick with it, as you have done and I have done too. And the other skills that you mentioned are really important. If you're going to have your own business, if you're going to be an entrepreneur basically and run your own business, you need to understand how to run a business. So nowadays you have to have your bookkeeping in order, your website in order, and all the things that go with how you're managing your business, because it's all up to you. And that's kind of scary for people. But in the long run, it's so liberating. It's all up to you.
Things get smaller and smaller, the business license and the taxes and all that stuff, and now it seemed like a huge deal when I first started out, filing those tax returns. And now it's just like a few minutes. I know how to calculate it. It's easy. I just go online now and just do it. It takes a few minutes. It's done.
Yeah.
Things get easier and easier the more you do them when you're committed to a practice like that.
Well, and in some cases, you can hand them over to a bookkeeper. If that's not your forte, what I found early in my business is that that's not something that I wanted to do. It's something I can supervise, but I'd rather give more lessons and have somebody else do that. So that's how I calculate that part of the business. But you know what, though? That's a strategy. And we're talking about making distinctions and strategizing for success to reach a goal. Mm-hmm. So the subject of willpower, tenacity, stick-to-itiveness, it's a vast conversation. And it's really fun to examine in hindsight in our own lives and to encourage other people to do it from a Feldenkrais point of view with self-care, self-organization, and the development of self-awareness.
Yeah. So as you use your willpower, just go carefully, pay attention. And if you're really pushing yourself through something, maybe step back a little bit, make sure that what you're doing is really ecological for you and those around you. And pay attention, make distinctions as you move forward, and making better distinctions, and you'll have better decisions and you'll have better outcome.
It's all of that. And it actually, the discriminations, paying attention to nuance, granularity, increases your ability to learn. So the skill of learning actually expands, and then you're more motivated to take on new learning, whatever it is. Like you mentioned, juggling, learn to be a juggler, learn to play a tune on the piano or the guitar. It can be simple. I recently had a lesson with my husband on the ukulele because he's a music teacher, and it was really fun. And it's like, I could actually do, in a relatively short period of time, I could play 3 chords and strum a tune. And I was like, oh my gosh, that's so fun. So much fun.
Did you learn Tiptoe Through the Tulips?
No, I didn't. But I'll ask him. I'll ask him to teach me that one.
That'd be great. That may be lost on a lot of people, but anyway, look it up.
Yeah. Well, it's been really fun speaking with you today, and I hope our listeners enjoy the conversation. And as always, we have many learning opportunities on our websites.
Indeed. So you can check out Donna Ray at donnaray.com. And you can find me at achievingexcellence.com. And of course, visit our podcast website, feldenkraisforlife.com, and sign up for our podcast.
Yes. Thank you so much. Take care.
Bye. See ya.
If you'd like to follow up with a question, send an email to info@feldenkrais4life.com. We would love to hear from you.
You can learn more about us on our websites.
You can find Al at achievingexcellence.com.
You can visit my site to join my classes and reach out to me for private lessons online or at my Longmont studio. You'll find my store, the Feldenkrais store, there as well. We can purchase books, audio products, and videos. Donna's website is donnaray.com.
And if you visit my website, you'll find that I'm offering individual sessions, group classes in the Feldenkrais method, mentoring groups, professional Feldenkrais training program information, and recorded lessons.
Thank you again so much for joining us. We look forward to you hearing us next week.
Bye now.
Bye.